Hello, good morning. Welcome to the Sunday Supplement. Coming up on today's show, England fans, they face life bans after Dutch police made more than 90 arrests in Amsterdam over the weekend. On the field, though, Gareth Southgate's World Cup preparations, they're underway with a 1-0 win over Holland in the Amsterdam arena. In other news, Zlatan Ibrahimovic, he's left Manchester United for LA Galaxy, but his agent, Mino Raiola, he's been making headlines this morning. He called Pep Guardiola a coward and a dog. Can't do things like that. We'll discuss Gareth Bale's future. He's finally heading back to English football from Real Madrid. OK, we've got a continental feel to the programme this morning. It's chai lattes all round, I think, Martin, isn't it? Martin Samuel's here. He's the chief sports writer, of course, at The Mail. Gabriele Marcotti, he's ESPN's senior football writer and the European football correspondent at The Times. And Guillem Balague, he's football journalist, of course, with Sky and the Spanish newspaper AS. Good morning to you guys. Good to see you. Martin's a regular, of course. Debuts for Guillem and Gab. Morning to you guys. Morning. OK, don't forget to tweet the show at Sunday Sup. The best will appear on your screen over the next 90 minutes. Let's have a look at some of the papers this morning then. We'll start with the Star. Lots of England chatter around, as you can expect, after Friday's win and ahead of that friendly against Italy on Tuesday at Wembley. Draw my number one, Jordan Pickford, who played against Holland on Friday night. Gareth Southgate intimating that he is now England's first choice goalkeeper and will start in the first game against Tunisia at the World Cup to Russia with glove. That's the Express's take on events on Friday night in Amsterdam. Jesse Lingard, the goal that he scored as well, his first in England colours, just what we wanted. That's Southgate's message ahead of Tuesday's game. I mentioned Mino Raiola. It's made it onto the back page of the Mirror this morning. He's the agent for Zlatan Ibrahimovic. Ibrahimovic, of course, worked with Guardiola briefly at Barcelona a few years ago. Pep Guardiola is a coward and a dog, a bit unnecessary, but we'll come on to those words a little bit later on. Paris Saint-Germain, according to The Observer, a big story this, they've made their move for Antonio Conte, the Chelsea manager, on his way out of Stamford Bridge at the end of the season to take over the French club. That's The Observer this morning. Players on their way out of English football as well. Paul Pogba on his way, according to the Sunday People this morning, and that's because Mourinho wants Rafael Varane from Real Madrid, a long-standing target of his and a big favourite of Jose Mourinho, and Toni Kroos as well on his hit list. Pogba on the way out, but this is where we're starting this morning. Bannon, back page of The Sun this morning. The FA going to get tough with the supporters who were arrested in Amsterdam on Friday night. Gareth Southgate's message, his disappointment. He says it was simply not acceptable. So we'll start there, Martin. We'll come on to the game a little bit later. But what are your thoughts? And of course, we've experienced England supporters over the years misbehaving. Did you feel, and did you have the sense in Amsterdam on Friday night and on Friday throughout the day that this was a return to the dark days, the bad old days of English football and travelling supporters?
Well, the first thing I've got to say is I didn't actually stay in Amsterdam. And I didn't stay in Amsterdam because I sort of suspected what Amsterdam might be like, so I stayed out by the airport. So I didn't really, I wasn't witness to anything other than what you can see on social media.
But first, I mean, just on that point alone, Martin, is that because you had the suspicion, you made the decision?
Yeah, I want to be going in the opposite direction to everybody else at the end of the match. Which
so you changed your travel plans accordingly?
Yeah, absolutely. But the thing is, look, first point is you should be able to play a game of football whenever you want, in whatever country you want, on whatever day you want, at whatever time you want, without the place getting smashed up. So this is not saying there's mitigation. There is no mitigation for this sort of behaviour. When you see the stuff where the boat's coming under the bridge and everyone's throwing beer at it, and it's just horrible behaviour. Having said that, when the head of the police, the police department that deals with football in this country, comes out and says, I cannot think, apart from arranging a match with Scotland in Magaluf, I cannot think of a worse planned game than to play Holland in Amsterdam on a Friday night as the last away England game of the season before a World Cup that we all know not as many fans will be going to as usual. So this is the last England away day, shall we say, of the season. When the head of the police comes out and says, I can't believe they've arranged this match, you've got to think it could be better planned. And I asked one of the senior FA guys on Friday night, I said, who actually did this? You tend to find when you know the plan, when the plan's bad, it's an orphan, basically. You can't find who the daddy is of this plan. And sure enough, it came back, well, you know, there's not one specific person. It was sort of like collective responsibility. No one was sticking their hands up to say, oh, yeah, this was my baby.
So it stops with somebody.
Oh, of course it does. Of course it does. But what I'm saying is you can't mitigate. This is not mitigation. It's just saying you've got to live in the real world and look at something like this and go, well, it should be. You should be able to play it, but you can't play it.
How can you separate, though, life from football? Football is a mirror of society, and there is a I don't know how you call it, a virus in British culture, in English culture mostly. You have to go to certain city centres on a Friday night and a Saturday night, and what you see is conquerors going into the city and enjoying themselves in a way that brings this. So if you know, I've lived in the country on and off 25 years or so, and what I'm hearing, a lot of the stories, a lot of the myths of youth is, remember that day we were drunk and we did this and we put our trousers down and all that kind of thing. And that, I thought that at this stage the new generation will go at that and say, but you know, Holland, we have to respect them. Benidorm is in Spain, we have to respect them. Magaluf, we have to respect them. Mixed with the fact that in some of these places the drink is cheap because it's the day to sell a lot of it. It's a back cocktail. Now, how can you separate football from life? I just don't see that happening. And as I say, there is more and more coverage in newspapers, in radio about European football. The vision of football generally it's got more layers than ever. There's more writers that look into European football in depth. There's more explanations of how other countries work, and you thought the readers, the new generation, will actually understand that and be respectful of it. I'm still seeing those things, and it's really annoying.
Is the situation unique to English football, do you think, Gab? Is this English football's problem, or do we see these issues? Do these issues occur elsewhere with other football supporters and their national teams? But of course, because we're more insular, we're concentrating on the England team more. That of course we tend to write about England football supporters and their behaviour when they're travelling abroad.
Well, hooliganism is an issue at club level in many countries. But here I think we're talking about something different. I think what's unique about this is that normally the support, at least in Europe, a national team gets in terms of traveling fans is sort of inversely proportional to how good the national side is. You know, you don't see tons of Spain supporters or French supporters traveling. England are the exception, right? You're the only big country that gets massive support. And on top of that, you do have this legacy of the city centre Friday night and whatnot. I wonder if maybe we don't turn this into a positive, because I'm going to venture a guess here that those 90 people, there's probably not one of those people is, you know how like the intelligence, football intelligence people have like their list of like the super banned dangerous hooligans that I bet not one of them falls into that category. I bet these are all people who are sort of marginal sheep type figure who went to misbehave. I don't think these are the really dangerous hooligans who are spoiling for a fight. So you've gotten rid of, if you're going to ban 90 people, you've gotten rid of 90 people who can be influenced to go and do something stupid or bad, and who, if they do enforce these banning orders, you won't be seeing abroad again. You haven't solved your hooliganism problem because the bad guys are too smart to get caught, you know, on social media peeing off a bridge onto somebody. But you've gotten rid of 90 potential followers who hopefully will learn their lesson, who hopefully will be embarrassed by this and next time won't behave this way.
Did you notice on Friday? I mean, I didn't notice until the actual players and the coaching staff walked over at the end of the game, Martin, that almost the entire visiting section of the stadium in the arena had already disappeared.
70-75.
I've never seen
70-75
a stand empty so quickly after a football match, but everyone told me that, well, 5 minutes, 7 minutes before time.
It had been going for about 15 minutes. It had been gradually empty, and we noticed it at about 80 minutes, about 10 minutes before the game. I think Sammy looked over, he went, look at the England section, and you looked over and half empty from what it was. And then by the time the players had, you know, finished shaking hands with the opposition and they turn and go to, by the time they would have looked up there was next to nobody. All it was just little pockets of guys around the exits, where they're the last people to get to the exits. That was all that was left, and so they were applauding a lot of empty seats. Yeah.
The football games are on the way, it seems.
This is what I mean. I mean, I often feel like that about, we're having a perfectly good time, and then someone sticks a football match in the middle of it, and we all have to start working. But it's an away day. It's not necessarily about the football. I mean, I've been at airports chatting to England fans who've been slaughtering Steve McClaren. Classic example, slaughtering Steve McClaren after we played Austria, before we got beat by Croatia. I tell Steve McClaren, I said the only thing is, the man's getting no luck, is he? I mean, we've got one fit striker. I said he gets injured 35 minutes. So he looked at me and went, who got injured? Michael Owen. I said, Michael Owen got taken off. So I said, we've already lost Wayne Rooney. I said, Michael Owen got taken off 10 minutes before half time. I didn't know Michael Owen got taken off. Right, so there's 4 of them there. And one of them went, I can't actually use the word. He said, I've got to admit, mate, we were a bit drunk. And that was it. But they slaughtered the manager. But
didn't realise they didn't have the resources anymore.
Didn't realise we'd lost our best striker 10 minutes before half time.
Yeah. And then
because it's about a little bit more than the football. It's about going out and having a laugh and all of that. And within that, there's an element that don't just want to have a laugh.
The other thing that was uncomfortable as well, yet again on Friday, was England supporters booing the national anthem. This time of the Dutch national side. Is that situation unique? Yeah.
Unfortunately, it's not. I think it's rare to see. I think in a friendly match, unless there's some sort of pre-existing, some political hostility or whatever. I thought that was.
But why?
I just thought it was odd. I mean, what
would motivate people to do that?
I just wonder if at this stage we've made the fans. We don't want. You see the pictures of fans, say 50 years ago, and they were with the suit and the tie and just watching, came and see, and then went home. But we are now making them active part of what's going on. We need their comments. We need them to say what they think of it. And there's not many chances during a game to actually be heard and make an impact of some kind. And it's their moment to say, here we are and we don't like you and let's go to war for 90 minutes. Mixed with the fact that you are conquerors. You're a culture of conquerors, so you don't have to respect anybody in war. And if you are going to a game for war, an anthem is a place to actually, show that you're animosity.
Do you think the history of the country plays a big part in the behaviour of England supporters?
It's impossible to separate both.
But if that were the case, though, I'll be contrarian for a minute, then wouldn't you expect German fans to go and boo everybody's anthem and to behave even more so?
I'm just saying that what happens with England quite clearly has to do with the fact that you go into countries thinking this is our place to conquer. You see it in Benidorm, you see it in Magaluf.
Taking over the city centre and taking over the town square with the flags.
Yeah, but that's a support. But that's a football. So I think that's a football supporter thing, right? Supporters of club sides tend to do that. They tend to like to establish a presence. I think what makes England unique is this is maybe the only big national team.
The sheer number.
Yeah, whose supporters act like club supporters. You see that when Scotland do it to some degree, or Denmark back in the day, or the Irish fans. That's all cute and funny, right? When England does it, probably maybe it's the sheer numbers, or maybe because England are a legitimate threat as a footballing nation. It gets put in a different light, I think.
How will you feel on Tuesday night, England, Italy, if England supporters boo Italy's national anthem and you're in the stadium?
I don't particularly care. You can boo whatever
care?
you like. No, I mean, look, I
you don't care. So you don't.
I have a
to me,
problem.
It feels disrespectful. I suspect Martin probably feels the same way.
I agree with you. I have a problem with booing anthems in general. I don't think there's ever a good reason. In 2014, at the World Cup, I got into quite a big argument with somebody from the New York Times who turned their back and started taking selfies, a colleague, during an anthem for that very reason. And it was Russia, and she says, well, I don't respect Russia. I'm like, good for you, but maybe respect the 11 players on the pitch and the Belgian guys are playing against. But if you choose to do this, that's your choice, and then I reserve the right to judge you for booing somebody's anthem. It doesn't make any sense. Doesn't make any sense to me, unless you're trying to make some sort of political statement.
I was going to say,
pointless.
The Spanish national anthem has been booed when, in certain occasions, where Catalan fans have been present, so in a cup final, for instance, and there is a big argument in Spain. Should you do that? And Catalans would say, and why not? Is again one of the few occasions where we are in numbers and we're saying, we don't like what's happening. There's repression, there's corruption, and we don't like what's happening, what you're doing to us. So there's a space and a place for it.
But there's a reason. There's a clear political statement. There's no clear political statement being made against the Dutch.
The Dutch national anthem is somewhat random, really.
Yeah.
That's the thing, and it almost felt a little bit knee-jerk, almost as if this is the last away match of the, we're going to be, it was a little bit retro, shall we say. It was a little bit like almost as if they went, right, we're going to, and also, but don't ever rule out the fact they know it winds everybody up. So they know, people know that it'll be talked about on programmes like this, and we'll sit around going, oh, this is terrible, and so they do it even more for that reason as well.
I couldn't tell on television, but was it a minority? I mean, you were there. You can actually get a better sense. Are we talking about a few hundred people?
It was audible without being a crescendo, if you see what I mean. I never really concentrate too much on it. I'm not really that aware of that sort of stuff. But you could hear it, and you thought, I wonder what that's about. But then again, if it had all gone off in Amsterdam before the match, then there's antagonism between the Dutch police, between the English fans, etc., etc. Who knows?
Just to finish off, Martin, if the FA, in terms of their own reaction to this and their own powers, are they limited? Do you feel that they're limited? Because they're limited to saying, please don't do, Gareth Southgate on Friday night, please don't do this, it's not acceptable. We saw this with the Germany game, didn't we? When the Podolski game, when he scored his send-off in Dortmund. And again, the FA said, please don't do this. But are they just limited in terms of what they can actually do?
To the powers of courts, you're limited to the powers of banning orders, and you're limited to the powers of the country that you're in sometimes, in terms of how heavy-handed they want to be. I mean, apart from just leading the players off, say at the end, and not applauding the fans, which then sort of groups everybody together and could create bad feeling. Yeah, the FA's powers are limited. The court's powers are strong enough, and if the courts want to do something about it with banning orders and travelling restrictions and things like that, they can do it. I mean, the FA can't really do too much.
And when it comes to the World Cup, I think we'll be pretty safely insulated, in the sense that they'll need visas. It's not an easy country to get into. If they have a list of people and say, don't let these people in, they're not getting in.
You won't even get into the country, okay. Good stuff, guys. Pretty heavy start to the morning, that's for sure. Hopefully Tuesday's game against Italy passes off without any problems. Okay, next up, we'll get the ball out. We'll talk about England's performance in the Amsterdam Arena with that 1-0 victory over Holland. That's coming next. Okay, welcome back. Let's talk about England's performance on Friday night on the field. Gab, what did you think of the display? An important win, I thought, for Gareth Southgate and his side. 5 clean sheets in a row now. You include that with Germany, Brazil, of course, back in the November friendlies. But what did you see on Friday?
Well, I think this sort of game, you don't look for results. I realize there's a confidence factor, and there's a media that then puts pressure on them and blah, blah, blah. And we've had knee-jerk England managers in the past who freak out and worry about what the media think. But I think ultimately it's about the performance. It's about how the players look on the pitch and what the chemistry looks like. And I thought that there were a lot of positives to take away. I think England looked comfortable at knocking the ball around on the pitch. Now, Holland are what they are. They're going through a transition. It's a restructuring, but it doesn't change the fact that, Lingard looks comfortable, I think, in international football. Kieran Trippier, who I wasn't sure about, looks fine in international football. There's no Harry Kane, but it's not really an issue, and you'll be better when he comes back and he can slot right in. So I think there's positives to take away from that performance. Whether going back 3 long term is the right decision and things like that, I'm still not convinced. But he's got a plan and he's progressing along it.
The decision to play Walker the back 3, Walker was the big surprise in there. Did that show an unexpected flexibility from Gareth Southgate? I know he's someone you spent a little bit of time with at St George's Park recently as well. But that flexibility. It almost felt innovative to us on Friday night when we saw the team sheet.
Certainly
bold.
It was a surprise. It's a step in the direction that Gareth Southgate wants to take the team quite clearly. There's too much focus on the positioning of the players. If you understand the game, and that's what it should be about, and if you have been properly coached, you can move around, you can do that kind of thing. And of course, Walker has been coached properly for a while. I just think that Gareth Southgate is in a no-win situation, in a kamikaze mission, because you see what he's trying to do. 3 at the back, a goalkeeper that can play as well, build from there. The positional game is important, so when somebody has the ball, there's 2 or 3 passes available. A lot of things that require a long time to coach, and he won't have that. He doesn't have the midfield for what he wants to do. The 3 up front, they're the kind of guys that out of nothing create something, but could disappear for 90 minutes as well. They're too individualistic. They don't work for the midfield. Even when you get Dele Alli and Kane, he may just improve a little bit, but he cannot do what he wants to do. Next is you. Next is what can you do with that? Because if he is considered a failure to go to a World Cup and not doing very well, not going through to the quarterfinals, whatever it is, are you all going to be putting pressure to him to say, right, let's change this hasn't worked, let's start over? Or you're just going to allow him to wait, and this would be his decision as well. He's a young coach. Does he change because everybody wants a change if we fail, or do I continue with this? And the idea, the FA should be strong enough to say, let's continue with this. You are actually into something. You are on the possibility of, in 2, 3, 4 years' time, get the players, the midfield that can do this. Get the forwards that understand that they have to move around. And then you will have more opportunities to win.
Get them? I mean, the national team manager can't control what's out there, right?
No, but can control the style. So you're actually saying that everybody wants to play in the same way, and that's what the FA is trying to do. Then they choose Sam Allardyce. But anyway, if they actually go with Gareth Southgate, it's with the idea of continuing one way of playing, one way of understanding the game, one way of entertaining the fans. So to throw that away if things go bad in a World Cup will be in my eyes wrong. But if they don't do that, it suggests that, yes, the national coach has got the possibility of continuing that job that has been started.
Okay, on that point then, Guillem, what do you think the fallout will be if England don't do well at the World Cup?
Well, that's the thing. I was talking to both of you, actually, and you were both saying it just, you have to be patient. You understand, everybody understands what is being done here.
I'm not that patient.
But I can see in the papers today words like creativity, progress, we're great. And I saw this jointed performance at some point where, yes, it was built comfortably from the back, but then the midfield didn't know so much what to do. And then it was get the ball quickly there to the front, and they weren't there to get it back early as Gareth Southgate is trying to do. So there's still a long way to go, and he won't get there in this World Cup. So I hope that everybody's patient enough to understand that these require a long time, and process is not very sexy, but is the thing that you have to do to dominate the international stage.
Martin, will you be patient at the World Cup? I know you like Lingard's performance on Friday night. You talked about the unexpected.
Yeah,
the
you
fly
always get a
almost,
bolter.
didn't you? You always get someone who emerges in the final few months or in the countdown to the tour. Of course, Dele Alli, Euro 2016.
Raheem Sterling, 2014.
Will you be patient with this side?
Well, it's not up to me. It's up to the FA whether they want to be patient. But they've lucked out with Gareth Southgate, because Gareth Southgate is attempting something a lot more ambitious than I can't think of since the Venables Hoddle era, because what Sven did was it wasn't ambitious, it was functional. He got the team and he organised it. That's what he did. And then once he'd organised it, after that, it didn't really develop too much.
Exactly.
And Capello the same. Capello had great results. I liked Capello a lot. But again, it was to do with he got it. He got a very good team structure, and he stuck with that. What Gareth is attempting is considerably more ambitious, because he's trying to create an England team like the England teams of, say, 20 years ago, when for a brief period we were trying to play in a more sophisticated way. And that, as Guillem said, it takes time. It takes time. And he's got one huge problem, because in our central midfield we haven't got gifted footballers, technical gifted people with a range of passing. There's some very interesting stats about Jordan Henderson, who I thought had a good game against Holland, but it's in this ballpark. It's something like 91 passes, 75 of which were backwards or sideways, and there's like 15 that are forwards or something, like 15, 16 that are forwards. Yeah, 15 or 16 that are forward, of which I think a third of those are misplaced. So we will get to Russia. I would hope that this team could get to the quarterfinals. At the quarterfinals, you are going to have a problem, because there's a very good chance you are going to come up against a team that will just dominate that midfield, because their use of the ball will be so much more inventive, creative, technically better than ours. And that's the one thing. You can coach a back three, and you can coach. And I thought what he did with Walker and Trippier was a fantastic idea and showed real imagination. You can't suddenly coach Jordan Henderson to be Pirlo.
And that's
you
why
can't.
I feel that Gareth Southgate will be seen as the guy who made the transition, but he's going to fail, because he won't have those players for a generation, maybe. So that means given two tournaments with the idea that see how far you can go, and if you are lucky in the draw and all that, if you actually believe that what's happening here is positive, it's special, and it will link with what's been happening with the under-17s and under-21s.
Sorry, I just don't see the logic in this. I mean, we make a big deal of national team manager, right? But ultimately, it's a guy who gets the players for 3 weeks before a major tournament, and then for anywhere between 3 and 7 games, if he's really good, in the tournament.
But you cannot isolate that from the whole thing that the FA is doing, that the youth sides are doing,
but
the kind
I'll go
of
further.
players they choose.
I'll go further.
The kind of coaches they choose.
You can and you should, because it's a completely different situation. If a player comes out with a very unusual skill set, in English Messi, for example, pops out in a couple years, or then maybe all these great things that he's talking about, the 3-4-2-1, whatever.
You add to it. So you don't believe in what's happening with Spain and with Germany, for instance?
I certainly don't believe what's happening. No, but I mean,
there's been a process there. There's been a choosing
but it's
of
not been a national
type of players,
it's not been a
which
national,
has sometimes, by the way, meant that some of the very good players, when we
I
decided that within one wingers, Joaquin
that.
had to go, Reyes had to go. So there was a choice that has to be made. You cannot play everybody, as Eriksson was trying to do. He's trying to put, Gerrard and Lampard and see if it works.
And no holding player, so it ended up far too negative, because Gerrard and Lampard are looking at each other all the time, and neither of them ended up going. Everyone thinks the problem was they both bombed forward. It was the opposite problem. They both stayed back, because they're diligent guys.
So imagine you have now the possibility as a national coach to say, you can get it wrong, because actually what we want is you to develop a way of playing which is going to help what is being done in academies and in... Well, then you talk to the FA and Southgate, because that's what they're trying to do.
There's two different things. I think there's a question of how do we produce players, and that's part of the FA's job through St. George's and whatever, and help the clubs produce players and guys who we think will be useful in the future, under-17s, the under-20s, under-21s, all of that. And then there's the actual national team when you're in the tournament. And to expect Gareth Southgate or any England coach to have the luxury that's afforded a club coach, where you can actually work with players continuously. If a player doesn't work out, you can sign him, you can sign another player, you can sell players, you can build your squad, I think is unreasonable, and I don't think is the right formula.
That's what he's doing. He's actually choosing players, Maguire, for instance, or Walker as a centre-back, because that suits the idea that they've got, not just for now, for the future. To me, that's... what should happen next and what is happening. But there will be a point
can we make a distinction between Spain's success, which has been built over a long period of time, and almost a plan of succession in place, and say Italy, 2006. How did they do it? How did that come about? Was that a process?
I think Italy 2006 was not much of a process.
It was certainly unexpected to us. Unexpected. The victory was unexpected.
I think it was unexpected. I think what you had was, in some ways it was the polar opposite, right? You had a brilliant tactical manager who had a whole bunch of especially attacking players who were very, very good, and who changed his lineup and changed his formation for every game to suit the opposition, because these guys were veterans and because they were tactically smart. They got it straight away. He gambled when he needed to gamble. Like, you're playing Germany in a World Cup semi-final away from home, and what do? You send on 2 strikers, and all of a sudden the Germans are like, was ist das? Like they can't deal with anything. They can't deal with it, and you get the upper hand and you win. But the sample size for international tournaments is so small. The things that can go wrong are so great. We all sit there and talk about Germany are world champions, deservedly so, and they beat Brazil 7-1. It could, by a hair's breadth, they would have gone out against Algeria in the round of 16. And then we'd be like, what is this German model? Oh, Das Reboot. Oh, Jogi Löw is, we need to look beyond that. When it comes to tournaments, because we have these knee-jerk...
did win as well, and are winning, and are candidates to win again because of the process. But of course, to win, you actually have to stop. Casillas has to stop a penalty against Paraguay, because otherwise it doesn't happen. You need to look, but don't you have a better chance of winning if you actually have got a clear idea of what you're doing? One that doesn't stick to how many World Cup wins Italy has had since 2006? Just one victory, hasn't it? So. There's behind it. It's like
it's 2 tournaments. Well, what does this mean? Like
2 tournaments is quite a lot. You should have won more than 1.
Because Italy aren't going to 2018.
But then I can turn around and see how many defeats they've had. What is it? I'm not saying the Italian way is correct or better. I'm saying you asked how they won in 2006. That's how they did it. I think in general, it's very, very risky when you treat the England national team job like a club job. I'm sure at some point we'll be talking about the Manchester City manager and how fabulous he is, what a fantastic job he's doing. Most would agree on that. And I'll refer you to where he finished last season. And that was part of the process, perhaps, he would argue, I would assume, that was part of the process of creating this great team here. And if Gareth Southgate is the England manager for the next 20 years, he's going to have nowhere near as many training sessions with the England players as Pep Guardiola has had with his Manchester City manager.
So then get, as he's doing, a little bit of Spurs, a little bit of City, a little bit of that way that he really believes in.
But not Manchester United. When you've got club teams that play in different ways with different managers, you're asking to combine. I don't know. I just think a bit more pragmatism generally is the right formula. Maybe Southgate will prove us all wrong.
Martin, just to finish off on the England team itself, when was the last time you saw signs of real progress, and when did you really believe in an England side? When was the last time? You might say this team.
Well, to be fair, there were signs of real progress the other night, because there was a manager who picked players that he wanted to play out the back, that he actively encouraged to play out the back. And he's not letting go of that, is he? He's not, because
he's refusing to buckle. This is how we're playing.
Because that's one of the things we've got. We have suddenly got a little clutch of centre halves and people who can play at centre half, as he's now done with Carl Walker, that can actually play out the back. Now, one of the reasons why Jordan Henderson might have spent so much time passing back is that the guys at the back are actually better users of the ball than the guys in midfield, and it might be an idea to go backwards to come forwards, and if you can protect those 3 and stop people closing them down quickly, they might be able to play a good pass in. I think there's promise. I know what Gary said about the results doesn't matter, but we haven't won in Holland since 1969. We've played a lot of friendlies out there, and we don't win them. So there is something to be said for the confidence of a victory, even in a friendly, because it's a victory in Holland. And I know we've won in Germany and it didn't mean anything, but it can't be bad. It's got to be, winning's got to be better than losing, I mean, whether it's a friendly or not. You'd rather win than lose. So that's positive, and I do think, and I can see Gabby's point about that you think short term with England, with international managers. You get a guy in, he's got 2 years to try and sort this out. If you don't qualify for the World Cup, right, let's get someone else in and see, you know, if he's got any better ideas. But you can see that this guy's got better ideas, and you can see that he has got a massive limitation in his team at the moment, in that central midfield position, that will stop us without a real good following wind, that will stop us getting really deep into tournaments, finals, semi-finals, things like that. So you either ignore that and say, oh well, we should get the semi-final whether we've got a guy in the middle who can run the game or not, or you can look at that and think, actually everything else is right. This is a massive flaw. If we can solve this, this comes together.
Sure.
And that's what I feel about England at the moment.
Yeah. Okay, good stuff. We'll talk a little bit more about England later on in part 5 when we look forward to the game against Italy on Tuesday night at Wembley. I wouldn't normally give Mino Raiola any airtime at all, but as he's made it onto the back page of the Mirror this morning, he's called Pep a coward over his treatment of Zlatan Ibrahimovic back in the day at Barcelona. I'm afraid we'll have to have a chat about him. More on him next. Welcome back with us this morning, Martin Samuel, Gab Marcotti and Guillem Balague. Let's just remind you what's on the back page of the papers this morning. Draw my number one. This is Gareth Southgate talking about Jordan Pickford, his performance against Holland on Friday night. He may well be England's first choice goalkeeper for the World Cup, the opening game against Tunisia in June. The back page of the Sunday Express, Gareth Southgate saying it's simply not acceptable. This is the talking about the fans' behaviour in Amsterdam before England's game against Holland on Friday night. Paris Saint-Germain, they've made a move for Antonio Conte, the Chelsea manager, on his way out Stamford Bridge at the end of the season, according to the Observer this morning. And we'll come on to this now. We just mentioned it, Sunday Mirror. Pep is a coward, Pep's a dog. That's Mino Raiola. Who's he? He's the agent of Zlatan Ibrahimovic. Ibrahimovic, of course, worked with Guardiola at Barcelona back in the day. Ibrahimovic now an LA Galaxy player, having left Manchester United this week. Talk us through the history of this, Guillem, and these are poisonous words, calling Guardiola a coward and a dog, but just talk us through the history, why Raiola hasn't got any time at all for Guardiola.
It's called him all sorts. And it comes from 2009-10 when Ibrahimovic comes to Barcelona. And quite clearly it was actually a decision of Pep to bring him in to replace Eto'o. And very quickly he realised that he had to treat him differently, that Pep had to treat Zlatan differently. But he already had the player that he had to treat differently, which was Messi. And it became to a point where Ibra did not apply the things that they were doing in training and that he was telling him to do on the pitch. In fact, it was almost like a geographical problem, because Messi used to play on the right-hand side, would make those diagonals, and Zlatan would be in the middle. And Pep would say, Zlatan, would you just move to one side? And it's like, but I'm Zlatan. And that was the essence of the whole discussion. So there was a point Pep told him, Zlatan, if you have any problem, come to me. And there was a discussion that it's included in Zlatan's book, in which Zlatan was kind of repeating things about what he could do to improve and so on. And Pep realized that there was no discussion. He was coming with a monologue, with the idea of change the team because I'm Zlatan and, you know, Messi will have to learn later on. So at that point, it was like, it's black and white with Pep Guardiola, and it was like, right, okay, I know I have to get Zlatan out. From that moment on, Zlatan didn't feel very well treated at Barcelona. Mino Raiola reacted, and the rest, of course, is everybody knows.
Yeah. Ibrahimovic leaving English football this week, of course, he's never recovered from the long-term injury, or fully recovered, I don't think, from the long-term injury that he sustained, Martin. But what was your view on Ibrahimovic, say, before he arrived in English football, or before he scored 4 goals against England in the Friends Arena that night against England, and the Ibrahimovic who left Manchester United this week?
I didn't have a higher opinion of Ibrahimovic when he left than I did when he came here. But there is a difference between acknowledging that someone is a good player and having seen it yourself.
So the appreciation,
yeah. you know, Ibrahimovic had played on a number of occasions in Champions League matches against English teams that you'd been at the match and hadn't done well. So, you know, you look at, but you look at a guy that the team wins the league every single time he signs from. I think Manchester United are the first team he's ever signed for that didn't win the league in his first season.
Won 11 in his career,
You know, so you acknowledge he's a good player. I mean, this will be sacrilege in Spain. I didn't see Raiola have too many great games when he played against him. You know, when I saw him, I know
Guillem
guys.
about to list his top 100 games now. We haven't got.
No, but
with respect,
that
we haven't
doesn't
got time for it.
mean I didn't then see stuff on television. I didn't then see other matches or the odd one or two games where you thought, what a great player he is. But you have a run. I know a fellow who will always say he never saw David O'Leary have a good game. Now that's impossible. David O'Leary was a tremendous centre half. It caught him on bad days. It can happen.
But the thing is, you can still tell. I mean, this is what. Yeah. And by the way, it's 13 league titles for Ibrahimovic if you count the 2 that they had to give back, which he counts and Juventus counts.
It sounds like you count.
I think they win them on the pitch, but the thing is, this always gets me. And I was around a lot of times when Ibrahimovic would play against, you know, I mean, well, what's the big deal with him? You know, I think it's influenced by a lot of things. First of all, because he's never been humble. Because you have this tall, oversized center forward with the hair and everything, he's going to get more of the scrutiny. What I never understood is, yeah, you can tell he had a bad game today, but you can look at a player and see that he's a technically gifted, strong, agile player who had a bad game. There's a difference between seeing somebody who's played badly and thinking he's a bad player, and just the absolute lack of respect that Ibrahimovic got for so many years, I thought was just kind of hilarious. You know, how do you get away with saying, "Well, he's rubbish"? What he's rubbish.
It's an interesting. There's 2 ways to look at it, and I think the special one sentence comes from this idea that you only are born in football when you come to Britain or to England. Before that, you have to prove yourself. So there's 2 ways to look at it. One, to say, how can you not respect Messi? All of a sudden scores a few goals against Chelsea and he's brilliant and he's talked about as the greatest ever. Haven't you seen him winning 4 Champions League and 8 leagues and being 5 times
I don't think
Ballon
anyone
d'Or?
ever doubted Messi in this.
No, but just generally, you can actually go that way and say, no, but all of a sudden the words were like big words that could have been used 4 years ago. But all scores against Chelsea and it happens. Or you can actually do the Jose Mourinho thing of saying, I'm going to prove you that you were all wrong. In a way, is the Pep Guardiola thing as well. The whole season, last season, going on about, where's your plan B? It's like, I don't have a plan B, because it's plan 1A, 1B, 1C, 1D. But that kind of motivated him to show to all of you that actually, I'm good. So, you know, the case of Ibrahimovic, he wanted to come here, didn't he? Yeah. Partly to say, I'll show you. And but maybe he did it a bit late.
Here at age 35, he scores 28 goals in 7 months, 8 months before he gets injured, on a team that finished 6th in the Premier League and managed by a manager who, you know, certainly played for him, but, you know, it's not as if United were scoring 5 or 10 goals every game. I think he proved his point, and I think you just have to kind of take a step back and say, but, you know, he did his part.
It's only natural that countries, that fans, that spectators respond to what they see, because it works the other way as well. Andrew Flint, I know how much you like your cricket, Gabby. Andrew Flintoff had a reputation in Australia that was far in advance of his reputation over here, where by the end of his career people were saying, well, he was a big personality player, but he didn't score enough hundreds and he didn't get enough 5-wicket hauls and stuff. In Australia, he had this hold over them because he played exceptionally well in a couple of Ashes series. So in their mind, Flintoff was this the pinnacle of English cricket, which by the end of he wasn't regarded as that over here. So it works the other way. If you have Chelsea signed Scott Parker because he played brilliantly for Charlton against Chelsea, and Roman Abramovich looked at Scott Parker and was impressed by it. You know, managers get moves and players get moves on the back of 1 or 2 good games.
There's a lot less science to it than you expect.
Well, there's a lot of. You're sitting in the stadium. You look at a guy has a storming game, And you think he could do that every week?
The problem is, one thing is to say...
It works both ways.
Because it's coming from another country to say, let's see, David De Gea. Could have been, let's see, but he's rubbish. So if the attitude straight away is because he comes from is rubbish and he has to just get better, which obviously he had to improve, but he wasn't rubbish. He actually won a Europa League and he had played 2 years for Atletico Madrid. That kind of attitude is the one that is to be criticised. It would be better if actually went like, let's see what this guy is, because he seems different. But the first reaction seems to be very negative.
And in that first season, he looked like he can catch a ball. I mean, every single time a cross came into the box, it looked chaotic.
Right, so there's a process, there's an adaptation, but to say, as you were saying, that he's a rubbish player, it's like, and he was compared to some of the bad goalkeepers in previous times, like, come on, hold on a second.
Yeah, he's turned out a bit
better. But a lot of those bad goalkeepers in
Taibbi,
previous times, all I would say, they didn't come good. So De Gea came good. But a lot of the bad goalkeepers in previous times came good.
Taibbi,
it was really fun. I don't think Taibbi was a great goalkeeper. But if you go back and I invite people to do this, he actually won, I think, he only played, I think, 5 games or 6 games for United. He actually won 2 Man of the Match awards. And then, of course, he makes 2 colossal blunders, and then he comes up with a stupid explanation, which is not even stupid. It's a technical explanation. His stud's too long, and everybody laughs at him, and then you never see him again. I don't think he was a great goalkeeper, but you get those sort of highs and lows with players based on initial impressions. I mean, Robert Pires, who I think had a pretty good Premier League career, yeah? Mm-hmm. Go back and look at cuttings from his first 6 months in England.
I think he's sub, isn't he, mate? He's mainly on the bench, isn't he? If I remember, time plays.
But he was considered a dud.
Yeah, but that does happen. Yeah. That does happen. People do make judgments, and it's nothing to do with them being foreign players or anything like that. The David De Gea thing is nothing to do with him being... It's that Ferguson had picked a succession of, shall we say, average goalkeepers.
We've been trying to find the next Schmeichel.
Yeah, he's been trying to find, and it hadn't really worked. Barthez, I thought, was actually really good. Barthez, I thought, was superb. But, he picked some inconsistent goalkeepers, shall we say. And De Gea, it fitted, that's what it looked like. It looked like, oh, here we go again. He's picked another goalkeeper that can't adapt to English football and can't catch. And if you can't catch in English football, you're stuffed, because there's a lot of teams that are going to pump it in. And I don't think it was, he's rubbish. It was more like, here we go again. It's another Manchester United goalkeeper that isn't up to the standard of...
But as I say, he was already winning after he was international.
Sure.
So it's a different sort of football, though. Guys, you're not faced with as many crosses and stuff like that.
You can adapt, as he has.
But they had to coach that, didn't they? They had to coach that, didn't they? Sure. By their admission, by his admission, they had to actually work on that side of his game, because it couldn't have carried on as it did at the start. That's what I'm saying.
To be fair to him, he's one of the best goalkeepers in the world. I don't think many people would doubt that now. Do you guys detect an attitude in this country with our media, that until you've done it on a wet, windy night at Stoke in the rain, that you haven't proved yourself?
That is...
Does that exist? Does that bubble
exist? Quite clearly, media here is about personalities and controversy. It's the priority. More and more we're getting tactical chat, but I think it took 7 minutes for Gareth Southgate to be asked about Holland, because there were other priorities. It happens. It's what apparently people want to read. So from that point of view, you're looking for that, for who are the big guys that will tell us the big stories, and what are the problems that we can explore and identify and analyze. So yeah, it gets to that point where if you are new to all that world, you have to prove yourself. And as I said earlier, you either go the Claudio Bravo way, for instance, where you cannot handle it, you cannot handle the pressure, you cannot handle what people are saying of you, and then you're dead, or you go the Jose Mourinho way, saying, I'll show you, I'm the special one. And you have to be strong enough to actually accept that this is how it works here. You're not going to change it. You shouldn't even try. And it goes back to Pep Guardiola. He never came to say, I'm going to change football. But yes, you motivated him to show that the way he wants to play football, which is not the best, it's just one way, but it's a winning way, and he's going to prove you all that it can be done in the Premier League. It helped him to be motivated.
Yeah, but even in the top, we can be dismissive of the top European leagues, can't we? We sometimes say, oh, Spain, La Liga, this is a 2-team league. Italian football isn't as strong as it was. German
Yeah, I mean,
football, it's all Bayern Munich.
I think there's levels to everything. I think we're guilty, certainly in Italy, we're guilty of the fact that, because we probably do spend more time on tactics than anybody else, we absolutely brutalize foreign managers when they come over, often in ways that, Mourinho, even as he was winning early on, got absolutely molded. He said, this guy's a tactical dunce. What's he doing? He doesn't, Frank de Boer, well, maybe with some validity, but, you get this, and if you get we have foreign players come over, in Italy we write them off immediately because they don't do one movement on the pitch, and then all of a sudden they're rubbish, they don't understand anything or whatever. So I think a lot of countries are guilty of it. I think with all due respect to Spain, because I think the technical level in La Liga is probably the highest out of any league in the world. You get players from Italy, not just Italian players, who move to Spain, and then they mishit a pass, and then they feel kind of set upon never to mishit that pass ever again, and it messes with their mind, and you don't realize that maybe they bring other things to the table, like they can run hard, or they've got a good shot, or whatever. So to some degree, we're all guilty of it. What bugs me, not just here, but in any country, is when people make blanket judgments about players, including things that you can see. You can see that somebody's a skillful player, even if he's not producing, and then it becomes a question, as Guillem said, of whether he can adapt. You ought to be able to see that. But that's not just an English thing. That certainly applies in Italy, and from what I can tell, I think it applies in Spain as well.
I just want to talk just briefly about Jamie Oliver. So, Jamie Oliver and insularity, because insularity, every country in its own way has insularity. So Jamie Oliver Channel 4 goes to Italy to make a programme about Italian cooking, which he loves, he adores. That's his absolute passion, is Italian cooking. And he goes around Italy and he goes to these places, and they're making these fabulous tomato sauce, and stuff, and he'll say, oh, what we should do, we'll chop some rosemary into it, and everyone goes nuts because Nonna didn't chop rosemary into it, and this is being made the way that Nonna made it 100 years ago, and any deviation from Nonna's recipe causes everyone to have conniptions. And then you go to the next village and you'll say, we'll put some rosemary. Well, of course you put rosemary to those idiots down the road. They wouldn't know how to make a tomato sauce. And this is their Nonna's recipe, right? And at the end of the programme, he said that he came away with such his renewed love for Italy. He said, because their passion for food is just fantastic, and you can walk into a primary school, you get a fennel bulb out, and all the 5-year-old kids know that it's a fennel bulb. But in England, you could get a potato out, no one would know what it was. And he said, but he also came away with an admiration for England, a new admiration for England, and how open-minded it is that they haven't got this very rigid culinary thing where if you stick rosemary into it, everyone goes nuts. You go, oh, right, what, you put rosemary? We'll put some rosemary into that.
But that's because food is something, with all due respect, you guys have not traditionally been very good at. Football is something that you guys invented.
No. We're not bad at food, don't worry. You know,
traditionally? When you were a kid growing up? You want to go through your school dinners back then?
I never had school dinners. My father's a poulterer, mate. We bought our own stuff. So, but what I mean is, every country has its own insular ways, and that's not a criticism of Italy.
There's no way, but
every country has its own insular ways.
I don't see other countries where, for instance, the debate about why British managers cannot get a top job in the country. I don't see that in Spain anyway, when actually passport shouldn't have anything to do with it. And that is underliningly something saying, but we have to get this job because we are British, and I don't think it should work like that.
We've got to speed this along because we're all going round to Martin's for Sunday roast, aren't we? I think you're roast beef.
We've got some sensational.
Yeah, okay, good stuff. Well, I'm looking forward to that. What time is it?
It's always quite late on a Sunday.
Okay, looking forward to it. We're going round there a bit later.
The cricket piece first.
Yeah, you have. Yeah. Okay, once that's out of the way around your house. Okay, next up we're going to be talking about Gareth Bale. Is he finally coming home? Is he returning from Real Madrid? Welcome back. We're going to talk Gareth Bale now. Lots of chatter yet again, about Gareth coming back to English football. Is it time, Martin, for him to come home? Do you sense it's the beginning of the end for him at Real Madrid?
Well, Real Madrid, one would think in the summer there will be an upheaval at Real Madrid. There will be a change of personnel. There might be a change of direction. Who knows? But and he may not be part of that. I can understand completely why Gareth Bale would like to stay with Real Madrid. It must be a gigantic wrench for any player to leave Real Madrid. And there was a time when I thought Gareth Bale would make the difference for any club. I just thought, right, whoever signs Gareth Bale, if someone can get Gareth Bale this summer, whoever gets him wins the league. He will be the difference for about 3 or 4 clubs. Whether that's the case now, I'm not sure. He has missed a lot of matches through injury. It is a very hard league. I know he knows the league. I know it's the league he was brought up in, but it's a very hard league, and it doesn't get any easier the older you get either. So it's a difficult one, because you think there should be a lot of clubs out there that would love to bring Gareth Bale back, but he will be very expensive. His wages will be astronomical, and if you look at how many times he plays, you wonder if there is better value out there. That would be my thought.
Is it the end? Will he come back?
I
Or
think
will he be forced to move on?
He needs a change of place. He needs a new challenge. He needs something new, because he's in a loop right now where he gets injured, recovers, and now he's recovered and has been for a couple of months, but he hasn't got the confidence of the manager. There's no doubt that Zidane leaving him out against PSG both games from the lineup suggests that he's not one that he wants to start with automatically as he used to be in the past. To sell, you need somebody that buys. So Real Madrid are looking for somebody that will get him. There's only one place really, which is the Premier League. It won't be Spurs, I don't think. I think Spurs are in a different place right now, and he has been at Spurs. He's looking at himself as, comes from Real Madrid, so where he's up there, first, second in the table. And the problem is, it's not guaranteed of anything. He doesn't know why he gets injured so often. And sports psychology says, as I was saying earlier, perhaps a change of the place where he hasn't fully adapted anyway, or doesn't speak the language that well. He's very, 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 very shy, and I know that the Kroos and the Modric's have been trying to get him to come out a little bit, but still in his own world. Comes out of that and maybe finds another challenge, and injuries perhaps disappear. He's got the quality. I disagree with Martin that he can actually do it, but we haven't seen it done it for a year.
Has he, just to finish on Gareth Bale, does he have the respect of Real Madrid supporters? Has he earned their respect over the years?
Every time there is a poll that would you sell Bale, it's like, yeah. And Real Madrid, by the way, need to sell to get the players they want.
But I think the interesting wrinkle in this is that there's also an actual tactical argument here. So, in other words, one thing that we've learned is that you don't want Bale if you're a team that plays a high-pace, high-pressing game. And you look here in England, you say that's a destination. Well, that would appear to rule out, unless the managers change, Manchester City, Liverpool, and Spurs probably for other reasons as well, such as wages. And then all of a sudden, you've got a very small pool of clubs, even in England, that he could go to.
There's a club that is looking for the best individuals around to just fit in if they can, otherwise they sell them. And with a manager that has said already publicly he would love to get Bale. So
From Manchester United.
Must be that one, yes.
OK, we'll see if that move happens at the end of the season. Just want to talk about another move that may happen at the end of the season. The Observer reporting this morning, an exclusive, that Paris Saint-Germain already in talks with Antonio Conte's agent about a move to France at the end of the season. What are your thoughts on Conte, the manager, and whether this can happen, whether it's likely to happen?
I think, as everybody knows, he's got another year left on his contract, and I don't think he wants to resign, but I don't think he necessarily wants to stay either, and I don't think the club necessarily want him to stay, but they don't want to sack him. So once that whole thing gets cleared up, he's going to need a home. He's going to need a place to go. Given the type of guy he is, he wants another top club, and in that sense, Paris Saint-Germain, I think, would make sense if Unai Emery goes, which I think we sort of expect will happen.
Even his players are talking about him leaving.
Luis Enrique has been approached as well PSG.
Luis
recently.
Enrique, yeah.
There's a huge question mark, which I know everybody giggles at and laughs at, and which is very boring. So we don't need to get into it too much. But this financial fair play issue with Paris Saint-Germain.
You're on the right table with
Yeah.
financial fair play.
Is
We
not-
don't have time, you're
Yeah,
right.
I know.
today.
It's not. What I want to say is it's not resolved. It will be. They've made it pretty clear that they're going to give a thumbs up or thumbs down in the summer. Chefrin has said, I will apply the rules, otherwise vote me out in 2019. We'll see if they call his bluff. But I think that's going to have a huge impact on who Paris Saint-Germain get next.
And how's Conte remembered in Italian football? Not only with the national team, but of course his work with, most recently, of course, with club football with Juventus.
He's remembered as, I think, probably in many ways, the way he'll be remembered at Chelsea. Somebody who's hugely intense, who gets the fans on his side, who wins things, who tactically can throw people a curveball or a googly, but by the same token, who wears his players out. I think maybe more so at Juve than at Chelsea, because I also had an older squad, and also somebody who at Juventus spent the better part of the last 2 years talking about we need to spend more. We can't go. If it's a €100 restaurant, you can't go in there with 10 euros in your pocket and blah, blah, blah. And ultimately, that grates on clubs.
Okay. Okay, we're going to move on in the next part. We're going to talk, we're going to look ahead to England against Italy. That's on Tuesday night with Gareth Southgate. Make some changes to his team. We'll tell you next. Martin's right. Gab does love his cricket, and he said that the place to read all about the Australian cricketing controversy this morning, there's only one place to read it.
Sunday Times done it brilliantly. Absolutely
Brilliant
brilliantly.
job. There you go. Have a copy of the
Thank you.
Sunday Times.
There
Take
you
that
go.
home with you.
There
You
you
can't read
go.
it
Take
now. We need to talk England-Italy because we're watching them on Tuesday night. Gab will be there, of course, as well at Wembley Stadium. So you were impressed. You were impressed enough on Friday night with the level of performance and the victory. What do you want to see as a follow-up on Tuesday night from this England side?
Well, you'd like to see more of the same. You'd like to see more of the same sort of encouragement and confidence, trying to use the ball from the back. We can only go around in circles on it because you can't solve. I'd like to see someone being a wonderful playmaker in the centre of midfield. We haven't got one, so that's not going to happen. So you'd like to see more of the stuff that he can influence continuing. I'd like to see him continue with Kyle Walker in that position and Kieran Trippier in that position. Now he might not do that because you don't, they tend to mix around these things. We'll experiment with this or we'll change this. I would like to see Kieran Trippier given a run at right wing back. I've thought this season, I think he does one thing that I haven't seen since David Beckham in how early he gets the ball in. Beckham didn't really have the pace that, say, Trippier's got, so he delivered it from high up, from sort of quite a way back. It was an early ball, but it didn't come from the byline. Trippier will hit first time from the byline. And it's just a great ability, great confidence, and England didn't pick up on it enough. England didn't pick up on it enough on Friday night. There was a couple of occasions where he hit it in first time and no one had really made that one. The Tottenham players make that one.
Yeah, Harry Kane would normally be there.
Yeah, Harry Kane would see it.
What will we see from the Italian national side on Tuesday? Can you talk us through Buffon being back in the squad, because we saw the emotion of his last what we thought was his last international appearance, and the tears at the end. And yet he's back.
He probably didn't want it to end that way, because everything was geared towards the fact that he needs 8 caps to become the most capped male player in history. The all-time record, incidentally, is 358 caps in women's football. I just want to point that out, how that's kind of a different universe. But and so it was all set up for him, right? You qualify for the World Cup, you play these friendlies, and then in the World Cup semi or quarterfinals, you break the record. That's not going to happen. And certain critics said, well, he's doing this to get cheap caps. He's doing this to make his farewell. Whatever the reason, and I don't doubt that he's still a very good goalkeeper, but I think you have to look forward. And Gigi Di Biagio got a lot of criticism in some quarters from calling him back, because I don't think any sane person expects him to be around for Euro 2020, and that's what we need to work for. If you want to give him a send-off, then organize a special friendly send-off at home and do it that way.
What about when does Donnarumma get his chance? I mean, is Buffon still a better goalkeeper than Donnarumma?
Again, people will say that he is. I don't think so. I think he's probably, for my money, from what we've seen this season in Serie A, he's maybe the number 3 or 4 best Italian goalkeeper. But that's just my opinion, and many will disagree with me.
Yeah, Mino Raiola being one of them.
No, Mino Raiola will agree with me. I'm saying you guys, Buffon is, based on this season, I'd have Donnarumma, I'd have Meret, and I'd have Mattia Perin ahead of him. So I'm sure Raiola would agree with me.
Yeah, I'm sure. I've absolutely no doubt he would agree with you on that basis. Tuesday night, Spain against Argentina. You'll watch that, of course, Guillem. What, in terms of Spain's evolution, their preparations for the World Cup, what are we seeing from them? Is there the confidence that we saw back in 2008, the Euros, 2010?
Finally back, yes. Lopetegui is using 7 or 8 players that he won the European Championships under 21. So, but they are the likes of Isco, who have got Koke, who's got lots of quality. So mix that with some of the older players. Silva is gone back home, so he won't be involved in the Argentina game. But Silva being the best goal scorer of the national side, under him and Del Bosque. It's almost like under radar. He's become really a legend of Spanish football. And remember when in the World Cup he played the first game and then disappeared. So he's in the thick of things, a midfield with so many variations. Koke, Saúl, Thiago, Busquets, Rodri, I mean, Silva, Iniesta, of course. And the only problem, perhaps, is the goal scorer. It's a terrible thing to be a striker with Spain because you're going to touch the ball 5 times in a Vardy kind of way, and when you do it, just score because that's the role. So they tried Rodrigo.
David Villa?
Villa did his appearance a la Buffon. Nice, but Rodrigo is somebody that's not there, the Valencia player, and arrives. But I think Lopetegui prefers Diego Costa, and Morata will be his number 2. The rest seems sorted. The last World Cup for Piqué, Sergio Ramos with him, Carvajal back from injury, Jordi Alba, De Gea. You have to count Spain as one of the favourites. It'll be interesting to see Argentina, what they've got, because they are like in the process of England, of trying to find the best 11, the way of playing. And Sampaoli, in this case, doesn't come from a background of youth football that produces that football. He's just completely one-off and is struggling to find that team.
Yeah, OK, so it looks like we're not going to look beyond Spain for the World Cup as far as you're concerned.
Germany.
Germany too.
Germany and Brazil, yeah.
I just want to say about Argentina, it was interesting what you mentioned, going back to our Southgate discussion. Sampaoli said, Lionel Messi owns this team.
Yeah. Who do you fancy for it, just in a word?
I don't really do predictions, mate.
You don't do predictions, OK, I'm going to predict the end of the show. How about that? OK. Yeah.